the ground up, and every brick that went in was a wonderful thing.
We felt that we were a part of something very big and something very important. We never had any clue that it would become what it is.
You could come here in the high holy days and hear a pin drop with 2,000 people in here. And these people were praying, and they were singing.
This is a place that has always been an incredible place of innovation, of a willingness to take risks, to be bold, to do things that no one else is willing to do.
You're building something for the future, not only for yourself, but for your children and your children's children.
In 1955, 10 ladies met at the home of Julia Katz and said, a lot of Jewish people are moving into this area. We ought to get some kind of a thing going, a temple or a facility of some kind.
We had our first meeting in May of 1955 over at the South Miami Community Center, which is now the South Miami Library.
We realized that we had to have some services. So we had tryouts for the 3 possible branches because there were Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative people who were involved. And we were going to make a decision. So we invited various rabbis to speak to us at the community house.
And we listened to all of them, and we then took our vote and decided that the vote was 2/3 in favor of a Reformed congregation. So South Day Jewish Center became a Reformed congregation.
The services that we had for the rabbi tryouts were at Sunset Elementary School. There were no criteria that we said beforehand. We just asked each rabbi to come and deliver the sermon and conduct the service for us. There were personal reactions to the style, to the content, too much Hebrew, not enough Hebrew, reactions to the personality. It certainly wasn't a scientific or even an academic exercise. It was strictly personal response to each one.
I was sent to South Florida by the Union of American Hebrew Congregations. I was their regional director, and I had an office downtown. And one of my jobs was to develop new congregations. This was one of them. And I had my druthers as to which one I'd sort of help along for a while, never dreaming that I would ever become the full-time rabbi of this congregation.
He was warm and of the age level. He had young kids, and we all had young kids. And it was generally felt that he was the best of the ones who came and ran services for us.
The very first service was at the Sunset School. And thereafter, when we made a sort of shidduch, the services were held at the University of Miami in one of the classrooms.
We had our first service in room 315 of University of Miami's Education Hall, and we shared the room 315 with a small Baptist church, which also did not have a facility, but they did have an organ, and I was the first choir leader. I only led the choir for one short year and then was happy to turn it over to Selma Baumgart, who led it for many years.
And we became a very integral part of the service. And because of the University of Miami School of Music, we were able to get students. And we had an integrated choir, of which I'm very proud, two of whom, both of them were African Americans, are now with the Metropolitan Opera.
There were a group of people who said they would come to these Friday night services if it wasn't in conflict with the University of Miami football game.
When it came time for us to have Friday night services, we had an early service which would cater to the people who wanted to go to football games. And after the service, we would have a bus that would drive them down to the football game. So and then we had a late service for the people who weren't particularly interested. We realized that we had to have a location. So we searched for a land site, and we finally found a piece of land on Kendall Drive, which is where we are now. It was approximately 7.5 acres. And Gene Fleischer, who was the second president, and myself went down, negotiated the deal on the thing. We paid $5,000 an acre for it, and we bought the 7.5 acres. We got the money by each of the members loaning the temple $1,000, and we put our payment for the land.
They asked for anybody who wanted to loan money to buy the building site because it was a hot area and prices were going to go up high. Well, I should have learned from the Army. I volunteered with 4 or 5 other guys, and that wound up being our first donation to the temple.
You have to realize this was farmland. This was not a sophisticated area of Miami. And because of that, a lot of the people that lived here and south of here, and as well as north of here, did not like the idea that there were Jews here. I mean, those people. And so every building that we put up was a fight, particularly the last building we put up, because of the zoning laws. And we had to sign away land in order to say that we would not indulge or infringe on anybody's property. It was not just the, okay, fine, we'll buy it and we'll build it. It did not happen that way.
They were talking about getting the plans approved at the county commission. But there was one commissioner. His name was Hewlin Long. And during the course of the conversation, he says, "Why don't you people be satisfied with what we've already given you? Why don't you people be satisfied?" Well, I did prevail. I did get the plans approved.
This was the first real outreach into the suburbs, and this seemed to be the right suburb. The Jews flocked here.
We were raising money as we were building. Half of the materials were donated, some of which we didn't even want to use, but we had nothing else to use.
In order to raise money, that means you have to go and talk to people in the homes or in the bowling alley or whatever it is. We had a league of people from the temple, probably 12 or 15 alleys. And I would walk from one to another, asking people not to give us any money, just make pledges. And I don't remember the exact amount of money, but I know it was something like $300,000-400,000 raised just that way. The spirit was in us, and that's how you got things done.
We started off with our first group of people was around 100 families. Within a year, it was up to 300 families. It then grew to as large as over 1,700 families. So it was leaps and bounds, just growing, growing, growing constantly.
I was given a free hand This congregation from the very beginning never questioned what I was doing in the service and what I was creating. We had services, for example, without prayer books at times. We had the first Slichot service in Reform Judaism in this country at midnight. We had tremendous success with this unique notion, and we would fill the sanctuary.
What this is all about is that in our Torah again, that we should build a sanctuary so that God could dwell among us. And I want to thank the founders who felt that and saw it and built it for us, and certainly our generation who is continuing to build it for the future generations.
We were very fortunate in that David Light donated the money for the school buildings, and we built those pretty much as the social hall was being finished. We built the classroom section, the Light Memorial Building.
David Light, at the time, was a member of another temple. He belonged to Temple Israel. And, quote, he said, "You young people can do what you've done." He says, "I'll give you the building for the classroom building, but you got to get it built." And we built that whole building, all the improvements, for $75,000. To this day, I hardly believe it.
I've always believed that the number one aspect of Jewish continuity has to be Jewish education. And with the temple and its day school, which is not only the first, but maybe the biggest Reform Jewish day school in Florida, I think that's essential to the continuity of not just my family being Jewish, but future Jewish generations.
My dream was to help them create a school that was nurturing, loving, where children would love to come, feel comfortable, where parents would love to come, and yet know that when this human being walked out of this school, they were a well-educated member of the community.
The teachers had the opportunity to be as creative as they wanted to be. We all worked together, and it was sort of like a Camelot. Teachers stayed here between 5 and 30 years, and they became a family, and we worked very, very closely together. And we all had the same goal in mind, and that was to educate the next generation of children.
We were one of the first institutions that taught disabled youngsters religious education. And we had 2 children here. One was disabled, and his brother was not, and they were bar mitzvah here together. I was present at that ceremony. There were so many things that we began as a congregation.
This is the sacred task that we have. You're really preparing them for life. You're teaching them things that they will carry with them, to give them a morality, to give them an identity with the people, with Israel, to feel responsible one for another. What you're doing is transmitting thousands of years of being a people to these children. You're teaching them Torah, you're teaching them Israel, you're teaching them God.
The difference between Beth Am and most congregations is the day school. The day school presents a certain quality of raising your children, educating your children, that they really can't get anywhere else.
Well, we could see that our kids were not learning enough, even in the Hebrew school and the religious schools, to meet the challenges of modern society. We had a director of our nursery school who wanted to start a secular day school, and I persuaded her to turn this into a religiously oriented school. We went to the board and they said, what day school? There are no day schools in Reform Judaism. We were able to convince our board that in spite of the fact that it was a pioneering effort, that we should go ahead and do it.
When we first began, the pattern was to fashion the day school after the British primary school. So we mixed groups, we mixed grades. My first class was a 1-2-3 combination. We've instituted an outstanding computer program. We now have 3 and 4 computers in every classroom. We have computer projectors. Our music program has changed. Now we've instituted the most outstanding writing program. Our whole science program has now become a hands-on program. The thing that I guess that has gratified me most and really made the school so unique has been the input of the teachers. There was always a working together to help the school grow and change and meet the needs of the day. Children have changed over the years.
My son, who's now 9 years old, is in the day school, and he gets a wonderful Jewish education and secular education that I don't think he could get anywhere else.
Well, Danny's in the pre-nursery program at Beth Am, and we couldn't be happier with the Jewish education she's getting. She loves going to school every day. I think the teachers are very nurturing and loving, and they instill Jewish values from the beginning. I mean, my daughter looks forward to Shabbat every week and comes home singing all the songs and is already embracing all of the holidays. And in addition, Beth Am's accredited, and so that makes me feel comfortable as well.
I feel personally responsible for these children graduating from our schools, whether it be the day school or the religious school, that they come out of the school with skills, with lifelong prayer skills, that no matter where they end up, whether it's here in Miami at Beth Am or anywhere in the country, they will always feel content and comfortable in any synagogue setting and be able to participate.
I'm going to give you sort of the speech that tells you how to go out and face the world now that you're moving on to 7th grade, either here or at a school elsewhere.
We were giving them a very good secular education, and we got a lot of parents that didn't have that much of a Jewish education. So through, and this still goes on today, we get the children, and they're still feeling the same way, then the parents get the education.
I remember when our children were probably in preschool, and they came home one day and said, how come we don't light the candles at home? How come we don't do Shabbat? We looked at each other and we said, you're right, we should. And that's how we started, by our children coming home and saying, you know, we need to do this. And then we built on it and got better and better together, which is nice.
We found that we were participating more, and we became more observant, and it was like a wonderful thing because the kids were teaching us about Judaism where we were just taking it for granted before.
And it is a gift, and I only wish it could be that way for all Jewish children. At the same time, it's unfortunate that all Jewish children can't experience that.
I really firmly believe that every Jewish child deserves a Jewish education.
I ended up being the choir director, and much to my astonishment found out these people didn't read music, and they did whatever they wanted to do, which was kind of difficult if you're reading music. I spent 4 hours of rehearsal saying sopranos, da 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 da, and they would sing da 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 da, and again together, and we went over and over, and that's how they learned it, and they were great. We trained our soloists. We didn't have a cantor. We used to train the soloists. They sing all over the city. Some have become choir directors themselves. So it was a very successful venture. Very rewarding, I might add, too, to me.
When I first came aboard, we often changed the music. Almost weekly, we would change different pieces of liturgy.
You are our God, shield of salvation, forever and ever.
And the music that I choose, some of it's joyful. It depends what the text. If the text is talking about Miriam waiting at the ends of the shore with tambourine in her hand, welcoming the Jews as they crossed the sea, I'm going to use a real upbeat piece with tambourine and little bongos. But if it's a piece that asks God to help me find peace in my life, I'll use something more melancholy and that'll be more thought-provoking. It's very important to me that our congregants become involved in many of our programs. With as many families as we have here at Temple Beth Am, you know that there's got to be great talent. So instead of my reaching out into the community and hiring professional musicians, I've gone right into our own congregation. And this is the kind of thing as well that's very important here at Beth Am. We don't have to go very far to find the talent that we have right here in our own home.
All right, now, how many instruments do we have altogether?
Great.
Hi. Oh, hey. I thought, what a wonderful idea to open the doors of our synagogue to our community and invite those of other faiths, because music knows no denomination. It speaks to all of us in many different ways. And then, as a concerned grandparent, I noticed the lack of fine cultural programming for children. And I felt that that was a very worthwhile endeavor to offer concerts for young people. And of course, now it has become so involved. National Public Radio broadcasts our concerts nationally. We're recognized. I mean, people know us. I mean, when I say Temple Beth Am Music Series, oh yes, we know. And particularly the big guys on the block, the New World Symphony, the Philharmonic, the opera, we all work together. And it's very satisfying and consoling to know that there are people out there waiting for us to start our season.
The important thing is for people to speak to people, for them to make that personal contact, to touch somebody else, and not to just pass them as strangers in the street. And I think we did that with the black community as well as the Christian, as well as the homeless. Wherever it was, we had the ability to be able to bring people in contact with us and us with them.
What I began with were the students in the religious and the Hebrew school, and to provide them with resource material. In those days, people really, really looked to the library for enrichment. Current fiction by Jewish authors. They were interested in modern Israel. This was the 60s and the 70s when there was a new book on Israel published sort of every year. There were also people who had had a very poor Jewish education, and for one reason or another, often because they now had children, they decided that they wanted to know more. And so I also built a reference library, and the standard was always excellence.
That's the question. Are there universal values?
When I retired, the woman who is now the librarian here, her name is Etta Gold, she computerized the entire collection. Our video collection is much larger than it was when I was the librarian. So she is definitely a librarian for the times as I was for my time.
One weekend in 1975, we went to a consciousness-raising group, which I was a facilitator of, and people then said, after it was over, let's form a Havara, which we named Havara Achat. It means first and foremost.
We had a weekend workshop. We alternated between Dr. Saper's consciousness-raising workshops and religious discussions run by Rabbi Baumgart.
There were about 5 Havaras started at Temple Beth Am, and ours is still around. We have about 5 past presidents in our Havara, and we meet once a month at someone else's house, and the subject is always something of Judaism.
At the end of the last session, we were all sitting on a canal bank, and Bernie sort of was reviewing his performance as a workshop leader. And at one point I said, how would you people feel about having this continue indefinitely? And everybody present said, yes, let's do it.
I think Beth Am has given a lot of people not only a good foundation in religion, but a good foundation in what is moral and spiritual.
You'll have a special Rosh Chodesh, a special convocation, and you'll blow the shofar on that day.
There has been an increasing search for spirituality. The Reform movement, for example, has been marked by a shift to including somewhat more ritual on an optional basis. But for people to have options, they need to be educated. On Saturday mornings, we now have 3 classes, 2 Torah classes and a Talmud class. The class that I sit in every week has 60 people. And the age range is from teenage to the 80s. So we hope to be able to provide a vehicle so that people can make educated choices and so that they can satisfy that increasing craving for knowing more about not only their religion, but knowing more about themselves as well.
So you said you're going to be blessed on your journeys, yeah?
I think that Joseph is getting blessed by Hashem.
I've been involved with really studying on a lifelong basis. It's something that I'm very interested in and have been really educated there about the need for increasing spirituality and increasing competence and literacy. Although our university may not be limited to purely Jewish topics, we look at the educational process as being a way of increasing Beth Am's role as a community, as a place where people come and gather and therefore identify more strongly as being Jewish.
We run a wonderful adult education program, and it's always open to the total South Dade community. And we do have many people who are not members who attend our Wednesday night Beth Am Institute of Jewish Studies classes.
I'm very proud of the fact that we were running outreach programs for interfaith couples and for people who wanted to convert at a time when very few synagogues were willing to do it. That we had an adult B'nai Mitzvah program, and very few places were unwilling or unable to do it. The work that we did in Tzedakah, I think, was really unparalleled at that time.
We had a program for seniors, and Selma Rappaport and I were the liaisons for that group of seniors. The group grew to about 150 people. They were active. They even put services together. They reached out into the community as well. They were a wonderful group of seniors. And then Diana Elson, who was the head of the hospital visitation program, she and I put together two groups that were unique enough so that we did workshops on them at conventions. One was a daycare center for frail elderly, and the other one was the sandwich generation. These people were sort of in between the two groups, and that worked out very well.
I remember about a year after I got here, we had emulated an idea that really no one else in the country was doing at that time. We called it a tzedakah fair, a way to bring together 300-400 people to come for a day, to do different things, and to really have an opportunity to do acts of tzedakah and to perform mitzvot and to understand that there's a big world out there.
It's very exciting. I mean, this place is overflowing in programming and you know, service opportunities, etc. And people are just, the place is packed all the time.
This is one of the bullet holes. This is one of them.
You go up to the panel to the left of where the Torahs are. There's a series of white spots running from top to bottom, irregular pattern. Those are bullet holes.
The bullets were shot at an angle from the street, which is lower than where we are, and so the bullets went up into the ceiling.
We weren't accepted here by everybody.
I heard something, and I thought it was garbage cans, and I remember Rabbi Baumgard walking off the bimah for some reason. I don't know why. Because if he had been on the bimah in a certain position, he would have been shot.
The rabbi called me the day after that happened, and he told me what had happened. And he says, we need to get that panel repaired. And I said, Rabbi, you know, my feeling is that we should just plug those bullet holes and keep them as a reminder. Well, bottom line is that was a decision. So to this day, if you go in the sanctuary and you look to the left, you can see where the bullet holes were.
While I was president of the temple, I received, at that time, the shocking news that Rabbi Baumgard told me that he intended to retire in the not-too-distant future. And having been the founding rabbi of the congregation, that presented a serious problem. So within a few years, we had to establish some search committees. The results of that search produced Rabbi Leonard Schulman. There was an overlap of about 6 months with Rabbi Schulman and Rabbi Baumgard. That didn't work out. I was also on the next search committee, and they chose Rabbi Jonathan Kendall. In short, that didn't work out either. The third search committee, they chose not to put me on it. That was the good one.
We were looking for somebody with a lot of neshama, in a soul, somebody that will be able to bring everything that Beth Am had to offer together and push it forward into the future. It was a national search and is a process that took us 18 months. but it was well worth it. We interviewed, I would say, about 30 different candidates, and we fell in love with Rabbi Bookman, and we made the right choice.
Beth Am was like a family whose parents had abandoned them. And then after 10 years, the parents came back to find that all the children were, thank God, they were all doing well, but they had lost the sense of what it meant to be a family. All the programs were healthy, people were running and going and doing, but there was no sense of a community as a whole. And that's what I think was my main task, was to set out to restore the sense of Beth Am as a temple community.
I think it's important that the people that come and the people that are in charge now know about some of our problems and some of our difficulties, know some of the programs that we started and hope would continue.
We're going to have a new sanctuary. We're going to modernize and take down some of the old school buildings. After a while, you just have to move on.
Beth Am will be here as a center for Jewish family in South Dade for the years to come. I know that our contributions will allow a Jewish family and a Jewish congregation to keep flourishing in the future in South Dade.
The Jewish population is going to continue to grow by percentage points every year, so we know there's always going to be a Temple Beth Am. We've created endowments now to make sure that that will happen.
I'm very hopeful about the future of the congregation, which is continuing as a creative, reformed congregation.
We will be in a campus that is a combination of old and new, and we'll all be looking at a very, very dynamic and physically beautiful, healthy institution that we call our shul, our congregation, our home away from home, Temple Beth Am.
We started for our children, which was the next generation, and now it's the third generation that's coming in. So from when we say from generation to generation, we're talking real growth from us old grandparents now to our children, to their children, and it's really wonderful to see, and we hope that it'll always continue that way.
People who are bar mitzvah here are now taking over leadership.
Judaism is community, more than it is anything else.
As far as the religious aspect, I would never believe that any place would have such an influence on me and Roz as well, that Temple has had on us, particularly from our kids. It's just amazing.
There is one window in the sanctuary that I feel epitomizes the way we feel about life. Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. And I think if we all adhered to things on that order, we would all help to make this a better world.
You're building something for the future, not only for yourself, but for your children and your children's children, and that Judaism is going to live in this place and will survive. That's a good thing.
shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be